Are all doing fine. I am Dr. Ganguly. Welcome to my channel. Today I am going to discuss something about the monk PhD supervisor. And I have a previous video where I have essentially classified PhD advisors into two broad types, the corporate boss type and the monk type. Now essentially, if you have a monk PhD supervisor, this person is probably very busy on his own tasks, doing his own research. He has his own philosophies and things to do, and essentially he will leave the student to themselves to figure out their problem and to complete their PhD. But do remember that the monk supervisor is a repository of a large amount of knowledge, but here you need to extract this knowledge from him and take the help of this person in pursuing your PhD and in going further. So you have to be proactive in your dealing with such a monk supervisor so that you are able to get the maximum out of this person. So I will give you 5 tips on how to deal with such a monk supervisor, and then at the end of this I will give you a bonus tip which you should keep in mind, which is very important. So let's start with number 1. So generally the monk supervisor will not meet you on any planned setting. He may meet you somewhere. If he encounters you in the department, just chat with you in one of the hallways and so on. But you must ensure that you meet your supervisor regularly. So I would suggest that you meet him or her at least once a week. So this is very important to make sure that you land up in their room when they are there, and you make sure that you talk to this person for at least 15 minutes and preferably for 30 minutes about your research progress. So this will keep your supervisor in tune with what is happening in your research, and if any problems you are facing in your research, this is the time to bring him or her into this problem. This is very important because if you do not take help from such a supervisor every now and then or every week, then this person will presume that everything is going well with your research, and that is never the real case in any PhD situation. Research typically doesn't go well most of the time. So let's look at the second aspect. The second aspect is, as you complete your first year and you start moving toward your second year of your PhD, start to put in some thought about going to conferences and have some discussions with your supervisor on going to conferences. Now, if he is fine with this, maybe you can pick up a national conference or even a conference which is happening right at your own university or very near, and you can submit a paper here. And this will get you started off on the process of paper writing, and this will involve you and your supervisor in a joint work which will keep you connected for the next 6 months or 1 year as the case may be. So this is very important that you start this process sometime soon, certainly by the second year of your PhD. In this video I am going to discuss about a PhD framework which is about 5 years in length, but you can change it depending on your PhD program. In some countries it is 3 years, in some countries it is longer. Now we come to the third point, and this is toward the end of the second year or third year, you need to start discussing journal publications with your supervisor. And you broach this topic by discussing the various important journals in the field where you see the papers typically being published and so on. And then you ask them, which journal do you think we can submit this paper to? Now, if you have submitted a paper in a conference, maybe you can revise this conference paper and take it to a journal. That's one possibility. Or if you have not submitted it to a conference, maybe you can directly write a paper to a journal. Maybe if you do not have enough material for a paper, you can write a technical note or a short paper in one of the letters journal. But try to convince your supervisor that it's a good idea to have a paper and you very much want to have a paper at this stage. Now, your supervisor may not be too interested in writing a paper. Remember, we are talking of a monk supervisor, so he may be focused on big picture issues. He may be writing a book over the next 10 years or something like that. So you need to draw this person into your field, and you need to mention that you want to write this paper and get this person interested in writing the paper. So that is partly your job here. Now, by the time you have entered your fourth year here, you start to discuss some facts about your table of contents of your thesis. So one of the strategies here is to have a discussion about your thesis outline in general and then draft a table of content of your thesis. Now this does help to cement the exact problem and the exact set of chapters which you need to complete for your thesis. So at this point in your 4th year, you may have completed maybe 2/3 of the thesis or 3/4 of the thesis, but when you write out the chapter titles and the various sections, it becomes clear as to what is required further to finish your PhD. And this kind of a document is very useful at the 3rd or 4th year because it lets you and your supervisor come to some conclusion as to what are the important problems which are still left in your research. You don't want to finish the 4th or 5th year of the thesis and then suddenly you realize that there is a major experiment which needs to be performed to finally complete your thesis, or there are 2 new set of results which need to be obtained to complete your thesis, which may again take 1 or 2 years. So it's important to keep some of these issues in mind while you are at this stage. Now finally, the 5th point would be that near the end of your thesis, start having some discussions about what you are going to do after your PhD. So this may be a postdoctoral position, this may be looking for faculty positions in other universities or joining some companies or research lab. Now once again, your supervisor may not be very interested in discussing these issues with you. Remember, if he's a monkish supervisor, he has so many other things to do. Maybe he is writing some tome on his subject. But you need to keep this person involved with your research because as far as you are concerned, that is your main thing going with this person. So again, make it clear as to what is your particular predilection in terms of your plans for postdoc and so on, and at this time take any help from him or her as to who are the possible postdoc guides you can get, if there are some contacts in the industry or in research labs which you can use, and also if there are some academic positions to which you could go for, and if he can help you in some of these things. Now this also makes your supervisor realize that you do want to graduate and there is something in line for you, and therefore you need to get him or her interested in the fact that you are planning to finish your PhD sometime soon. And this discussion is important to make professors realize sometime that the student does need to graduate at a certain point of their PhD program. Finally, and this is a bonus tip, and this is coming from some real experience I have had with monkish supervisors, and this is that sometime your supervisor may not exactly remember who you are or your name and so on. And I have seen this happen in a couple of cases that the students were not meeting their supervisor regularly. The supervisor was very detached and monkish, and the student thought, this is great, I am also going to meet him very infrequently. I am going to spend most of my time doing my own thing, and maybe sometime even wasting that time loitering around the university campus. So what happens with these kind of things is that the supervisor may actually forget who you are, and he may start confusing you with some past student or some new student and so on. So do remember that your supervisor should remember your name, should remember who you are, should remember you are his student and so on. So again, weekly meetings are very important. If it can be more frequent, it is great. Hang around in the department, make eye contact when you meet him, remind him that you are working on your problem, that you are having some issues with your coding or with your experiments or something like that, so that this person clearly knows that you are his student and you are planning to graduate someday. So this will certainly help you finish your PhD in the university concerned. So these were some tips I had for you today about how to manage a monk supervisor, and I hope these tips will be useful for you if you have such a supervisor. I will see you in a video sometime soon.